All right, welcome back to the game. I'm clearly not Dom, so I'm Matt Lee. I'm here with special guest Merill Fernando again, just because you guys loved him so very much and he has some really cool stuff to show off. We're going to be exploring Microsoft Entra and really kind of that whole suite and what it's meant to do to help solve some of these challenges around zero trust and around how we work in today's modern environment. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and please turn on the bell so we can have this pop up in your feed. Also, if you are watching this anywhere but the YouTube channel for PAX 8, PAX 8 Cloud, or PAX 8 YouTube, you can't have your comments shown on screen. But if you do come from the other, then we can. So it's been a crazy week. I don't have Dom with me. I'll go ahead and say that right now. I'm in a very interesting place because I'm actually in the Cowboys training stadium at the Star. No, I didn't succeed in an amazing physical pen test. I'm here by their admonition and allowance. I did get my gear in the legit way. But I'm here for RoarCon with Lion Guard and working with a bunch of MSPs here talking about, operationalizing their own attack surface management and the things that matter to them around that. So yeah, I'm here. I happen to be able to be presenting from the Star, so you may hear music or people talking or maybe a football player running behind us. But I will try not to let anybody kick a field goal over my left shoulder. Okay, so let's get started. One of the things that I think I wanted to tackle right now, since I do have this opportunity and as a soliloquy with Dom missing, is that we had probably the largest outage in history play out, and it was not from a cyber attack. In fact, the irony of this last Friday was it was from a cyber protector. It was from one of the good guys, in fact, one of the best good guys, CrowdStrike out there. And CrowdStrike pushed a release in their updates that was out of band, meaning it was part of their reactive protection or their kind of advanced protection capabilities that then triggered a blue screen of death by reading a unallocatable memory location, somewhat summative and maybe a little inaccurate. But ultimately, it created the agent crashing and causing a blue screen. Now, that's not too bad to uncover and recover from because you can just remove the file unless you were a good practitioner and you were using BitLocker and you were protecting those assets with cryptographic shredding. What is cryptographic shredding? It's this ability to say, if I've encrypted this device and it's left my presence and I destroy the key, then by the nature of destroying the key, I've destroyed the data and therefore I don't have a breach. I haven't had data that's been compromised, right? That's kind of this whole argument. Well, that same protection bit people in the butt on Friday because then when trying to reboot into safe mode, in order to read that hard drive and boot, you have to decrypt the drive, which means that you have to have the BitLocker key that now must be obtained. One of the things I want to talk to Merill about, because he's here, is how you validate somebody calling in for that BitLocker key. Think of that massive attack surface that might come out of that I would definitely abuse to attack you and steal data if it was within my capability. And so when we think about this, it brings up a really good thought process around that. One of the things I also want to speak towards is for anybody that's a vendor that wants to go out there and talk about CrowdStrike in a way that belittles them and moves business to them in the EDR space, your comeuppance will come back to you. And you will understand that this world is in that space. And in my opinion, doing that is nothing more than ambulance chasing. And I made a post on Friday about this with a picture of Starbucks being down and saying, hey, care about your provider, care about your MSP, care about that company that's down, care about the person that's dealing with this, because guess what? They're humans. And that post has now had 170,000 views and interactions with it because of just how much that lands on this point of we're all suffering. And I'm going to be completely candid. On Friday, I was sitting at my desk at home, and it's a unique moment that I am at home. And I broke down and cried. I genuinely broke down and cried. I was sitting there with tears rolling out of my face. I'm going to try not to right now, because it made me realize this is where we are. This is where we are, that a single change, a single failure in quality assurance, which as they released today in CrowdStrike's release, they actually did have a QA system that was checking these patches in this rapid patch release, right? This rapid protection framework. It just didn't catch the fact that it was reaching an unaddressable space and would cause a crash. They just didn't catch it. And at the end of the day, when we start thinking about this, there's this understanding that this is a software quality problem. Jen Easterly came out on Friday, the director of CISA, and she said, we do not have a cybersecurity problem in this nation. We have a software quality problem in this nation. And I tend to agree with her. I tend to understand that why in the hell are we having 56,000 CVEs by mid-year? Why are we dealing with this level of failure? If we were to do that with bridges, it would be akin to saying, yeah, that one fell. It sucks. But man, we're going to get better at it next time. We'll just note that down as a common vulnerability and we're going to move forward. That never happens in things that kill people. And yet we live with this today, that one QA failure isn't done in a bleeding edge manner or other methodologies that would simply have found that failure. And so I don't want to get up on my pulpit too far because this all happens to all of us. But I would just say that I broke down because we're in a common state that as we push this ball up the hill, the rock rolls back down again and we push it back up again. And we're not at a point where capitalism has directly fixed this problem. We haven't made it to where software quality is such an akin thing that it beats a feature that's about to be released. We haven't made it to where those things that need to be in part of a startup are part of a startup. All right, I'll get off my soapbox here. There are a lot of us suffering. There's a lot of things that are down today. One of my friends has 20,000 endpoints still down today with no expectations of remediation in the near future. They're talking weeks and months potentially for someone to be up. And my point is that we all have to demand better. We all have to invest in better and bet on those companies. So get off my soapbox before I fall and break my neck. I think it'll be great for us to transition over to the brilliant words of Robin Harris talking about Copilot and some of the things that you need to be on your radar. And then afterwards, we'll come back with the real guest and I'll shut up for most of this. It's going to be fantastic. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
Are you ready?
So today we're going to talk about Copilot. So on the other side of Beyond, we are Beyond. We've started playing with Copilot in our department. And one of the things I want to talk about is really to be of the highest value to our customers, we need to get our skills up. And we need to have some experience with these tools. So if you haven't integrated this into your environment, it's going to be kind of hard to make a case for your customers taking the plunge. So what I'm going to suggest is take the plunge. And it's not as magical and instantaneous, like, poof, I've got this skill down and now I'm a prompt master. No, it's not like that. So there's going to be this learning curve, and you're going to have to give yourself some time and some grace and some opportunity to understand the use cases where this tool makes sense and where it doesn't. So that's your homework, to dive in, take some classes, understand how this tool can help you in your business increase your productivity, to take off some of those tedious tasks, to automate things, to make things faster, make yourself efficient. Then you can speak to your customer base from a place of experience. And one of the things you're going to discover as you're going through this, prompting is a skill. And the more sophisticated you are able to construct your prompts, the more this tool is going to be able to work for you. It is almost like you become a mentor to Copilot. And think of Copilot as a junior assistant. You have to give it so much context. You have to come to the table with some wisdom and understanding about your environment and what you're trying to accomplish. What's a good outcome and what's not a good outcome. You're going to have to tweak it. No, that's not exactly what I meant. And you're going to have to go through these iterations. But once you dial this in, a couple of things are going to happen. You're going to get skilled at working with Copilot, and you're going to optimize some of your operational activities. And then you will be able to speak to your customers from a place of experience and from a place of being a consultant who's been there, done that. And one of the things about Copilot is anything in your environment, particularly in your Microsoft suite, that a person has access to becomes full game for these prompts. Now, if you haven't properly locked your data down, you could be exposing data you don't intend to. So that's sort of like a prerequisite that you got to be managing your data with data hygiene. You're going to have to understand where your data is, who has access to it. And then when you run your prompts, then your prompts will be able to go into your emails, your files, your OneDrive, your SharePoint, all of these things. It'll be able to comb all of this data and pull back pretty intelligent responses. But again, you want to have guardrails and you want to experience that for yourself so that then when you're offering this tool to your clients, you can give them some real life, hard evidence of this is what it could probably do for you. This is where you might use it. These are the benefits. There are the things you want to do as prerequisites. You might have to have some additional tools or security protocols in place. And we're going to have to account for there's a learning curve. And we're going to have to give ourselves time to learn. We're going to have to give our employees time to learn. So we're going to take a little hit up front. There's going to be a little bit of a hit. But on the other side, we'll be more productive and we'll be able to offload some of those tasks that nobody really wants to be doing anyway. And people can focus on the areas where they're brilliant and that they enjoy. So have fun with Copilot.
Time to level up. Level up.
All right, we are back. You all love Merill. He's probably one of the smarter humans I know and very humble too. It's also 5:30 in the morning in Australia, and he's not in an awesome football stadium. So I've already got one thing on Merill. He may be smarter, funnier, nicer, but I'm here with this football thing, so it's pretty dope. Okay, what I want to set the stage for this is that we live in a different world than we did 5 years ago. When you think about most security models, they talk about infrastructure and walled gardens and firewalls and edge points and all those things. And guess what? We had this like virus thing that kind of went around the nation and the globe, and then we decided not to go to work and we all worked from home, which means we now are working from Starbucks and home and infrastructure that's not designed for the way we decided to shoehorn it in for many of us. So when I say all that, it's to say that I believe the world is shifting to this pivoting from walled garden methodologies to live where you are, bring the point of protection to your endpoints. And I would also quote Phyllis Lee. Phyllis Lee of CIS says, "Your network ends where your users' fingertips land," which means wherever that may be, whatever endpoint, wherever it might be, is going to be the level of that protect surface that you're having to manage and that attack surface that you're having to manage. So the argument is that the world is shifting to ZT, or zero trust, and extensively zero trust network architectures, ZTNA, that start to solve this. Microsoft has released a core CASB or products that have a secure web gateway, that have some ZTNA type architecture capabilities that are something we're going to show off today. And so for the first time, I'm actually not going to talk most of the time. I'm going to leave this to Merill. So Merill, welcome back. You're awesome. What do you have to share with us today, man? I'm excited.
Hey, yeah, it's good to be here. I'm really excited, and thanks for all of the feedback from last time as well. So today I'm going to talk all about Entra Suite. We just launched it a few weeks ago, so it's all brand new, and I just want to let people know what it is, what you get with it, and how it can fit in with the rest of the things that you have and protect your data, your users from all the baddies.
Oh, I love that you're using my
So,
term baddies, Merill. That makes me very happy in my
yes,
heart. I just want you to know it didn't go unnoticed. Thank you. All right, fair.
cool. So I'll head into demos, but just give sort of a high level
Set the
overview of
stage,
what
sure.
it is that we are going to like how it all fits in together, right? So the overall solution areas for Entra, we start with zero trust access controls that admins can apply. It's a directory that you know and love. Then we'll be looking at how you can secure access for your employees. We look at securing access for the customers and partners who you would work with, who would come into either your tenant or your employees' access data that are in customers and partner tenants. And then we look at how you can secure access regardless of which cloud it is in, right? So whether it's hosted in your data center, or whether it's out there in the world using any third-party solution, how you can secure access wherever it might be. So this is how it all fits in with zero trust access controls that you know and love, with like conditional access and so on. We have the core identity and access management. To secure your employees, we just launched
Yeah.
this, the whole zero
I,
trust
I want to add
network
something, Merill, just
access.
to shed
Yes.
some color on this. When you talk about
Yeah.
ZT access controls covered by CIS 6. And CIS6 builds upon this understanding that you have an identity, and I've identified who Merill is. I've done some
Yes.
authentication methodologies that I'm putting in place that then go towards being able to say, based on these authentications, you should have access to these things. And that could be stronger or weaker based on CA, things of that nature. So that's where that ZT access control speaks towards principle of least privilege, in my opinion.
Exactly, right. And this is bringing the network into the picture. So previously it was all about you can connect from anywhere, but people, the world we live in today, you still have a lot of things that might be on-prem, that use
Yep.
legacy protocols. And how do you do things like saying, okay, before you access this file share, I need you to do a phishing resistant auth, right? So that sort of combination of the modern ways of doing things while working on legacy things, how do you bring in
Sure.
that sort of protection is unique to Entra, that we are sort of trying to show how it can be done, where you mix both the old and the modern and
Yeah.
use the unique ways of doing things. Then we look at how you do the overall identity governance as well, right? So who should have access, when they should have access, and when should they lose access to things as they
Sure.
move between roles. You tie all of that together instead of having sort of very disparate solutions and sort of putting them all together. And I'm going to show you how seamless that
Yeah.
experience is for users when
to,
you go
to
that
add to
way.
that too, when you think about being a raw practitioner and an MSP that's out there, role changes and scope creep are really challenging. And if what we did, Merill, back in the day was we had dynamic groups that said if you change from this identity to this role, then you're going to be out of that dynamic group and in this dynamic group, and then you'll have access to these things. And so, to your point, you're
Right.
getting this ability to manage scope creep, right? Extra permissions that allow you to
Yes.
be more of a risk by managing it more automatedly. And to your point, you now then extend that out to network assets and to legacy technologies and things of that nature, which is amazing from this. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yes, exactly. And dynamic groups are good. They have a place where you can do what we call like birthright access, right? Just by being in the
Yes,
role, you get
yes,
access to
yes,
it.
yes.
But then you end up giving wide amount of access because you don't know when the person will really need it. So before they
Right.
need it, you give them access. You give them access to roles and backend systems, which maybe they don't need it. Like, why would you need to
Sure.
assign access to
Yeah.
them unless they actually need it at a particular time? And that's where you can sort of ensure you are giving least privilege.
Yep.
So
And
that
time-based least
really
privilege,
helps that.
right? Where moment of need,
Yes.
JIT, and really for anybody out in the audience, it's the term JIT-GIA. JIT-GIA means just in time and just enough
Yes.
access. JIT, JEA, just in time, just enough access. And what it's speaking towards is, and Merill just spoke towards, sure, we can do this enough access aspect of principal least privilege, but really, why don't we make it where you have to actually hit them when they have that access, not just that. So it goes to that speaking of trying to accomplish JIT-GIA, basically, is what you're speaking towards, Merill.
Exactly. Just keep your surface area really small for the baddies, right? Like
Correct.
you don't want more people that they can attack. You
Right.
reduce that whole surface area, the number of admins, the amount of access person has if their
Sure.
token
When
maybe
they
is
have it.
compromised and the token is stolen. Yes. So it just gives it what the bad guys get is sort of very reduced in terms of the
Yeah.
scope of what they can do and the harm that they can do. And they'll need to trigger something like get an approval, something before they can, get access to the different systems in the
You
backend.
mean
So that's
administrative
how we
controls to
reduce it.
technical capabilities? You're blowing my mind right now,
Yes.
Merill. Blowing my mind. Okay. Great call out.
Nice. So then we have the advanced, the identity protection, you sort of all of the risk-based
Sure.
controls we apply, and what we spoke about, right?
Right.
Like
VC.
verified control. So, for example, someone calls help desk. How do you know that it's them, right? And I'll show you a demo of
Right.
how we are solving that with verifiable
That ties right back to the
credentials.
CrowdStrike challenge, doesn't it? Somebody needing that BitLocker key and being able to validate they're them. That's that point that you're making. And also some of the cool work being done with VC. There's a company called Credivera up in Canada that's doing some amazing stuff with extensibility of
Yes,
VC and what that could mean to the populace. So I'm excited about verified credentials, Merill, for a lot of reasons, and the demo you're going to do today. It's very
absolutely.
awesome.
And we are very excited because with Entra Suite, and I'm going to walk you through it, you get it. So it's not something that you need to, buy on
That's
top of
awesome.
everything else. We have our whole customer, the external IAM side of things, which is when you need to build a solution where you are selling something, you have maybe a shopping cart or an e-commerce site or any
Yeah.
other sort of site that maybe you are an ISP with a service where users need to sign into a portal, your customers need to sign in, pay their bills, and so on. So we have the customer identity, where our initial focus has always been workforce, and that's where we
Sure.
are strong in. Our customer identity has been there for a long time, and we've sort of now evolving that and supercharging that by having it built off Entra itself. And then you come
Yeah.
to secure access in any cloud. So whether you are in AWS or Google Cloud, how do you make sure that people have limited access? You're not over permissioning them.
Yeah.
That the storage accounts, the SQL servers, they're all locked down. All the secrets are kept safe. How do you audit who has access to what? Right. So
Sure.
in the old world, we had all these VMs and VMware, the VMware servers or the
Well, and you
vSphere
had
servers.
decentralized identity planes, right? You had an Active Directory
Yes.
over here. You had ADFS extensibility from this one. You had Entra ID access from over here. You had AWS extensibility and IAM over here. And to your point, you're trying to
Yes.
get that down to 1, 6.7, and 5.6, right? 5.6 in CIS says centralized account management. 6.7 says centralized access control. And what you're really getting down to is bringing all of those disparate workloads, workload IAM aspects back into one single identity plane. And that's the real purpose of this extensibility, right? Is that a fair way to say it?
Yes. That's why we start, but also we have people being provisioned into different permissions, right? Like contribute access
Sure.
to this whole resource group or to this subscription or this AWS account. And then suddenly no one knows who has access to what, right? Like, and then no one is aware of
Yeah.
how they can reduce
Yeah.
that least privilege, bring it down, because they grow like weeds, right? Like all of the Google cloud services,
Yes.
and the devs want access to things in production, and you sort of just give access, or maybe they deploy things right through ARM
Right.
and all of their scripts, and they grant themselves wide access, but they never use them. And suddenly you have sort of, if that one account is compromised, all
Yep.
those storage accounts which have all of the data are now accessible. So
Well,
how
and
do
that's
you
5.3, right?
make
Disable
sure?
dormant accounts, trim
Yes,
permissions, remove from those that aren't being used. And really,
exactly.
if you have it in one place, you can see that Merill hasn't signed into this service for 2 years. Maybe we should strip Merrill's access to this, right? And those would be
Exactly.
invisible to you without a deep audit across a lot of different things in that regard. So yeah.
Yes, yeah. And how do you bring all of that, right? You send people going multi-cloud, you have AWS, you have Azure, you have Google Cloud, you have roles in Entra as well.
Right.
How do you make sure that people, if they're not using it, you reduce that? And how do you even know if you're at risk or not? So that's where this comes in. So what we've done is we are now overlaying all of our products in here. And you can see we have Entra ID P1, which covers all of the security access and trust controls,
Yep.
which basically anyone who has an M365 license, you have what's the premium license, right? Entra ID P1, you get conditional access, you get dynamic groups,
Right.
you get in the audit logs, even risk events are triggered, and if the credentials are leaked, they are in the audit logs. You have all of those core capabilities available. With,
Defender for
Zero
Office,
Trust.
Defender for Business capabilities that are fantastic in that regard as well.
Exactly. So anyone with an M365, like even a business premium license, you do have all of those features in conditional access. And because of the Microsoft's one license per heartbeat, you could have multiple tenants as well, which might have Azure AD free. You can still make use of all these capabilities even in those tenants, right? Yeah. So having multiple tenants is not going to be a big deal. Then we come to securing access to employees, and that is what Entra Suite gives you. So we've sort of taken the best of all of the new things that we're launching, and we gave the option for folks to be able to pick and choose what they want. But if they go all in with Microsoft Entra and with Entra Suite, it's a lot less, and you get to play with some of these cool things that I'm going to show, like with Verified ID. It's all like thrown in, and suddenly it's going to give you a complete holistic solution without having to buy so many different disparate solutions.
What's happening is this democratization right, Merill? What's happening is democratization of a lot of these functions, right? Like what used to be
Yes.
Entra Private Access was me buying a Cloudflare tunnel separate. Entra Internet Access might be using a CASB or some other SASE solution,
Yeah.
SDP type methodology to be an SWG or secure web gateway. And so a lot of these things are now packaged into one identity plane, one platform, one tool set, one scalability. And that's what's so intriguing to me. And this may sound like a pitch for Microsoft. Yep, I'm a pretty big fan. I believe in it myself personally. And so I was an early trial of Entra Private Access, which you're going to show here in a bit. And I'm a big believer in bringing things as close to the identity plane as possible, which is one of the bases for zero trust, right? Is this understanding of identity centrism in that regard. So, all right, I've bored them enough,
Absolutely.
Merill. Continue. Sorry.
Yes. No, absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah. So with the Entra Suite, we bring all of that together, and especially like it's a hard thing, right? You will take years trying to deploy each of these on their own,
Sure.
like just trying to roll out the secure web gateway, trying to roll out a zero trust VPN solution, then trying to do a whole governance-based solution, setting up all of the access. These are all years worth of work. And with an integrated solution, you don't need to be doing the solutioning and trying to fit them
You don't have to
together.
build the building
We-
blocks before building the work. You're building it
Exactly.
right away.
Why would you need to spend time? Yeah, your focus is your business, right? Your focus is what you're trying to sell and make money off, not building these security solutions and playing Lego and building and
Right.
putting all of these things together. You go with a simple solution, and it actually makes it a lot more accessible to a lot more customers now. The customers who couldn't, even have all these sophisticated things,
That's that
they can just,
democratization point.
exactly go with that Entra Suite. It makes it a lot more accessible to folks. And verified ID is completely unique to the Entra Suite as well.
It is.
And we're going to see how that plays into that flow.
I feel like we're robbing people of all this time with slideshows. Let's get into the awesomeness here.
Yes, awesome.
go.
Yeah, so let me head over to the demo, right? So let's say I'm sort of onboarding, right from the start. I've got a new employee coming in, and they've got a welcome email. So this is someone completely new. We're going to go
New to
through
the
flow
Contoso
of how
team.
all of this works in. Yes. So we have Miriam who's joined Contoso, and she's got an email, and you can see she's got all the steps saying, get on the Authenticator app, and here's your temporary access pass for you to sign in. So on the day she joins work, she gets in, right? So she clicks on the temporary access pass, you copy that, and
And I'll also
email
add
itself,
really quickly,
right?
Merill, just for people, notice how this is going to her Hotmail address. Miriam's now a new employee getting this to her personal address. It really matters to verify your people, y'all. It really matters. Dragos suffered from an attack where someone attacked that person that was about to start working, got into their Gmail account, and then gathered those credentials. So just understand, when you're handing out this first temporary access pass, it's the first time someone's ever going to step into your world. Make sure that key goes to the right place. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox, Merill, but just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, feel free to interrupt and as I walk you through this, right? So she opens the Authenticator app and signs in. She says, okay, let me add my account. I'm going to add a work account and sign. Now she's doing all this on the phone, right? She got the email.
Yeah.
She's just going through this whole process on the phone, signs in, and you'll notice there's no password involved, right? She just got the temporary access pass, which is just a one-time use. Once it's used, it's gone. Right, it cannot be used again by an attacker, and
that's why you want Miriam to use it, not attacker guy, right?
Absolutely, yes. So then she goes through the process of registering her device and getting, all of the company details. And it's all protected with the Face ID, the Authenticator app, and she's all set up. So now she has MFA capability.
And you noticed you can structure this so that passwordless sign-in was enabled in the beginning, right? So think about, as you're deploying these things for people, about the user experience, that UX, and having that passwordless already set up. I've already identified the phone. It's already got the Face ID. It's already met the requirements. So just wanted to call that out, that's something I saw happen there. It's a great job on that.
Yes. So this whole sign-in, and the next best part is we're going to do this whole, okay, she's got her new laptop, came in a box, and she's opening it up. You'll see how she sets up the sign-in without even a password, right? So she goes through the out-of-the-box experience, picking the country, and now she can sign in.
And now
But
she has a
wait, she
password
doesn't.
or passwordless options to sign in, right? Because she's
Yes,
created
she
those
doesn't have a
already,
password, right? So we sent her a temporary access pass, no password. She set
right?
up
Okay,
the
everyone,
phone.
it's time to
How
make
does
our
she
way
get
back
in without the
into the
password?
sessions.
So she can then say, I'm going to use an app, and then trigger the MFA through the app. She gets the approval from the phone to sign in, does the sign in, and she's all set. Now her device is enrolling, getting all of her company, the controls or policies in.
And
Everything
this
is
is where you
done.
have your Intune setup, autopilot, all of those pieces
Yes,
enforcing all
all
those
of
nice,
that
juicy
magic comes
company
in.
processes that you want in place to protect those assets, right? Setting up Windows
Yes,
Hello, setting up the user experience, all of those things. So just to call that out for people that are
and the
wondering,
device is encrypted with BitLocker as
which we will
well.
say can cause some problems on the diagnosing other
Yes,
challenges. Let's just say, yeah, I
yes.
digress.
So the next step is to make sure she sets up Windows Hello, because that gives a phishing resistant authentication method on the device, and she won't need to use a password to sign in on the
A
device.
lot of
So
people don't
we
realize that, Merill. The TPM is storing, the Trusted Platform Module is storing a signed nonce and a private key that are then being used for those other assertions. And so the point is, if you're not using Windows Hello and realizing that Windows Hello and a PIN is a very viable two-factor authentication method, you have missed the mark. You have a device you must have, that's something I must have, and you have a PIN that you must know, and those are your two components along with the TPM being in that device. So I just wanted to call that out, that Windows Hello is MFA, isn't it, Merill, in that regard?
it is 100%. Yeah, and I can't believe I need to keep convincing people. I just did an infographic the other
I
day.
do it
It's
every day.
like
Yeah,
90% of the attacks start with a phishing attack, and
sure.
Windows Hello just completely stops it, right?
It
So
annihilates it.
uh,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, and a lot of organizations, they talk about the small 2% of the attacks where someone shoulder surfs and gets the pin and steals the laptop, but 90% of the attacks all remote from, like, people sitting in their basement in some country across the world, and they're attacking and trying to get in. You can block all of that with Windows
Yeah,
Hello. So
100%.
Miriam now
I say
just set up Windows
99%, but
Hello.
yes. Yeah.
Yes. And if she ever gets phished on this laptop, Windows Hello will protect her, because
Right, because it's not
the
usable
Hello
somewhere
sign
else.
in.
Yeah, it's only
Yes, because
usable there.
any
Yeah.
other domain will get blocked, and now she doesn't even have a password, right? So she cannot give away a password if you remove the whole password from
Yeah, there's nothing to steal if
equation,
you don't know it,
right?
right? And that is the
Yes.
concept of passwordless. Well, it looks like we have a comment from the
Yes.
YouTube chat, so let's see what we got here, y'all.
Yeah.
It says, and I can't read past my screen. It says, I can't read it. Would you read it to me real quick? I can't. I apologize. Meryl, can you see that?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Okay,
Just
just
out
out of
of
curiosity,
curiosity.
how much monthly spend do we need to get back to having a dedicated rep? Probably don't want to tackle that one here. That's not a for
Yes.
this conversation. Okay, great. But I would say someone maybe will answer that for you. I apologize, Zog. Nice to see you. Okay, continue
Awesome.
forward, Meryl. I apologize.
Perfect. So Miriam has set up Hello for Business. She has an MFA auth factor, and she goes in. So now she's signed in on her laptop.
Sure.
She goes and opens out
Myapps.microsoft. Yep.
my apps. Yep. And she goes in, let's say, so this is all identity governance is doing this in the background. Because of her role, she has access to all these different apps. We call these birthright access, right? So an employee comes
Sure.
in, they get these as part of joining the org. She's also been added to a group, and so you can see she's accessing an application, and you can see there's a global secure access that is
Yeah.
protecting all
Interesting.
of this, right?
Yeah.
So it's all been deployed through Intune. She opens and she can
It's all
access.
been
This
deployed through
could be.
Intune, and it knows her
Yes.
primary refresh token identity in the very beginning, meaning that when she's signing in,
Yes.
that global intra access is essentially your Zscaler or your other things that you're using for like SDP. It already knows who she is. It's already pulling that from that core identity
Yes.
in the primary refresh token of the laptop in that way and through Intune's settings. So there's no touch. This isn't you doing anything. It's just there, and she has access and you're monitoring traffic. Okay, continue.
Absolutely. The admin has set up. It's all like there's no different sign in. It's all covered, and it knows who the user is. And that's the key, right? So it's identity aware. And I could be accessing, this could be an on prem app as well.
Yep.
And because it's through global secure access, through the VPN, it's being routed through. So you'll notice something interesting here, right? Now, the admin has set up a file share and said, okay, you can access that, but you need to do
Yeah.
MFA for this file share, because there are lots of requirements. In Australia, we have this maturity levels of MFA
Yep.
that says even if you're accessing something on-prem, whether you're going to trying to do an RDP into a server, or you're
Yep.
accessing a file share which has really important secure data, you need to do MFA. You can't just get
Correct.
single factor to this. And that's where now conditional access is universal. So if I click on this, you'll see she doesn't get access to the file share immediately. That's because the GSA client picked it up and said, no, you can't access that. You first need to do an auth. And an admin can say you need to do a phishing resistant auth as well,
That's
and they
correct.
can define the rules for that. So she has to just initially do this auth. Here it's just a standard MFA. She completes that and then has access to the file share. So
Correct.
even like that's where the private access of the global secure access comes into play. You can start protecting apps, legacy apps that don't use modern authentication.
And I'll just
You now bring
demystify it for
benefit.
y'all. What ends up happening is when you're dealing with the network centric apps, which I did, SSH is what I demoed on the stage, right, of accessing SSH. Let's say that is on 10.16.10.2, right? And we need to access that. But I'm not there. I'm at Starbucks. What the secure access does in this Entra secure access aspect is you have a simple little agent running on a server today. And I would like to say, Merill, like, can we get that thing in Linux soon? Like, you'd make me a very happy guy if I could Dockerize that agent.
Yes.
But the point being is that it's running on a Windows server and it lives in the layer 2 or layer 3 network that has access and, east-west access to that file path and file server. Which now when you make that a gateway, when we're defining that app, we're saying when you access this, go to this gateway. So what's happening transparent to the user is that it's just giving that as a route, essentially, and I'm over summarizing, in that space of how to access that backwack file server name in that regard. Is that a fair way to say this, Merill, is how that architecture
Yes,
functions?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
yes.
Continue. Good.
Perfect. So now she's got in, maybe she needs to call the help desk. And this is this whole scenario, right? Like she's going to be calling help desk for the first time. How can the help desk person verify that
Sure.
she's who she says
That might
she
really
is,
matter.
right? Exactly. So what we'll do is we'll go through this scenario, right? So she's trying to access the help desk. Now we are saying, okay, we've rolled out verified credentials. We have an employee, maybe your passport, other details have been captured as part
Sure.
of the onboarding, and we've just captured not the actual image and those photos, but we have the metrics of
Correct.
that person. She'll first need to get her verified employee like a digital card. Think of it like when you join an org, you get your employee card, right? Like a physical card.
Right.
You can get like a digital version of that on your phone. So you don't need to be carrying a physical card. So the verified employee card is something like that. So this app sort of walks her through setting it up. And that's where Entra Verified ID credentials comes in. So
and I have my first one that I ever got, which was my
perfect.
Microsoft
Nice.
event that I met you the first time about 2.5 years ago, if I recall.
Nice.
But yes,
So this,
and I want to speak towards that verified credential that he's getting is just a cryptographic possession token. Like at the end of the day, it's tied to the device, and it is a cryptographic proof that I am within mathematical capabilities, me. And it's a separate credential. So for anybody that's demystifying what is verified credential, it is something I hold in my authenticator that is a token that is tied to that then proves I'm me. Is that a good way to summarize that, Merill?
yes, it's a decentralized one as well, right? Like you can present it to anywhere, any service that will accept it. It's an open standard, and
DID,
depending on the
DID
claims
web,
that are put
DIDI.
in, correct, you can use that. So say, for example, you get your university, your certificate, your degree, or course completion. And sometimes uni might not exist 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, right? Or the school you went for to get your certification. Yes. So with the decentralized ID, that IDP doesn't need to be up and running or for forever, right? They can
and nor
issue
does
a
it have to share
decentralized
information
IDP.
about you. You mentioned passport earlier.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to share my passport. It just has to assert that I have one. It just has to assert that I am me and that passport. And that's the unique part about this. Not to get too theoretical, but it's a really neat standard for that.
Yes. So as an employee, I've been onboarded and I need to get my own sort of digital version of my, the employee card. So it's now built into my account, and she can go in and say, okay, get my verified ID, walks her through the process to get this into her phone. So she'll need to open the Authenticator app, and you see this nice tab called the Verified ID, and that's how you can scan that QR code and get the Verified ID onto the device.
And as an
Right, and
MSP, think out loud about the things you can do with this. You could say, my technician has had this training. That could be a portion of an ID as you really experiment with what verified credentials could be used for. You could start seeing that it could be used to actually empower your access control systems. Like, hey, maybe you're not allowed to use Sentinel-1 until you've had the Sentinel-1 training. And now we can assert that you've had the training, thus allowing you in that access. A little bit getting creative outside the lines today in its usage, but that's a way
yes,
you can
and
think
it's a
of it, right?
very valid use case. Like, yeah, I used to work in an org, and they needed to make sure people did their training, the security training for the year.
Yep.
And you always had that small 5% who just ignore all those emails. And so we did a manual thing where we created a conditional access policy and
You
put
can't
a
sign in
took a
unless you've
list.
taken the test. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exported a
Brilliant.
list of everyone who didn't complete the course, and we were blocking them out and telling
That's
them,
so good.
like, giving
Yeah.
a weird error, and like they had to figure out why they were blocked, and then complete their training. So
Oh,
you
it makes me
can
happy.
now use verified ID for all those scenarios, right? You can say present
Correct.
this card where you've done the training and you got it onto your card, and you can sign that in. Right. So now she's going to call the help desk, and she set up the verified ID card, and she can say, okay, I already have my card. Now, this is what can be repeated every time she's calling the help desk. Before the
Correct.
call is even connected to the help desk need to know that this person who's on the phone is actually Adam or whoever they say they are, and how do
Yeah.
you validate who that is? And that's where the beauty of the verified credential comes in. It's not just asking them some random questions, and then if they guess or know the answer, you can give them the
Yeah.
BitLocker key.
The
Or
other approach people have taken is live authentications, which actually can have some challenges, right? Because if you go down the live authentication path and you're dealing with external personas, you're tied to whatever their IDP access is set to, and you have some real complications. In fact, you know this if you've ever received an outside SharePoint document that you need 19 steps to sign into for that person's satisfaction of policy. These type of VCs
yes,
allow you to have, or verified credentials, allow you to have an out-of-band method that is simply by possession cryptographically you. And as you said before, distributed identity, or DID, is the underlying protocol being used, which is this way to
yes,
give distributed proof that I'm me, irrelative of my IDP and extensibility, which also helps that other thing you solved, which is that customer identities, customer portal, customer ID. Now I can actually have that be decentralized and something I can just hand out as a credential of validation that is really interesting and unique compared to traditional IDP methodologies,
yes.
in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So when she's calling help desk, she can say, okay, I have my verified card. I'm going to scan that in.
I'm me. Yeah.
And yes, so she takes the phone, or he takes the phone and scans it, opens the Authenticator app. Now, this is the unique part, right? And this is what you get with the Entra Suite as well. You can do what's called the face check. So the org already has some of your, when you onboarded, whether it was your
Yep.
passport or some other form of ID, they have your picture and they know like what you look and so on. So she can say next, and you'll say, I'm going to do a real-time face check of you.
Sure.
There's no person sitting on the other side validating all of that. We're just going to use we use OpenAI
Face ID
behind the scenes
methodologies.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, to do the face ID, verify the person. So now we know it's not someone sitting in another country who doesn't
Right.
look anything like you who's trying to get
Right.
in. We verify the person,
And
right?
also
So
critically, you have to actually have access to that credential on that phone, which means that this is a hyper local check against that identity and the way it was
absolutely,
stored. Right. So this, just to make sure and
yes,
dispel the myth of this is on that local asset, which means you have to get it out of my cold dead hands. You've got to get my face and have me actually authenticate
yes,
it, which, I've got a cockeye. It makes it really hard to pretend like you're me. So no, I tease, but yeah. So this is a local face check on that local device to ask that TPM to sign the thing we're asking it to sign, and to give that credential. Right. So ultimately, that's the piece that people are missing, maybe.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And so with Entra, face checks do cost. There's cost associated with the whole OpenAI and doing all of that. So with Entra Suite, you get like 10 checks per person per month. because they're not going to
Sure.
be calling the help desk, etc.,
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. But for those specific scenarios where you need to, have that proof of
Extra
this
face
person
check,
is
not
who they
just
say they
possession.
are.
Right.
Exactly. And you don't want it for every sign in as well, right? Like that's going to
That's
get
right.
really annoying for people to hold up the camera. Um,
I
so
may have lied to everybody.
that's
There's a
sort
dude
of,
lining up to kick a field goal over here, which is very weird.
oh, nice.
Okay, I digress.
Cool. And yeah, so this is another scenario of company to company, right? So you're sharing documents with
B2B.
an external customer or B2B, and or maybe someone like this is from Contoso. She's trying to access an application, and what you can do is instead of using and you want to verify that this person is only from this company, or maybe
Sure.
they've done this specific training, right? So you want to make sure that it's that specific scenario that the person is having access to. So let's say they try to access the document, and they are blocked access, right? They complete the sign in, right, and they don't have access, right?
Sure.
They've done MFA, but you want to make sure that it is who they are, who they say they are, right? That they are having verified credential. So if they don't have access, we walk them through this, and this is where the ID governance process also comes in, right? So they first need to apply for this access package to say, I need access to these
Sure.
documents, but there's an extra requirement for this access package that says you need to have a verified ID. So I need to know that you are who you say you are, not just someone who has your token or your credential. So they can, again, since they have their verified credential, they can use that and do that additional sort of sign in to say, yes, I am an employee of Microsoft. And you can like this is how you can
Sure.
verify that this is only a Microsoft employee, or whoever you shared the document with is applying for this
So
access
now at this
package.
stage, you've sent VC, you've sent assertion I'm me, you've sent assertion that I'm part of this organization, and now we're asking for access to this package, right? That's the prerequisite badge first. Now you can get on the list and come
Correct.
in, is the point, right? It goes through some
Yes. Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an additional workflow now to say, okay, you need to submit, ask for access, and somebody is going to review your request. It could be maybe
Looks like
somebody in
it's
your own
Dom
company
asking,
who's
nope,
managing it.
rejected. I'm rejecting it.
Exactly. Yeah, and so they get access added to this access package. It could maybe have like a quarterly access review. Someone reviews whether this person really needs access
Some
to
human
this
administrative
file share going
function,
forward.
something to that nature.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they've added to the access package, and now they just go and refresh the tab. Now they're able to access because that approval is there, but it's also governed. So they
That's
just don't
correct.
have like free access for as long as their guest identity lives. They have access only for that given period.
And is that identity
So
ephemeral, Merill, or does that stay in the logs so that someone could come back in with the same VC over and over again?
they can. So it's depending on the sign-in frequency and other policies
Sure.
that you would set up as the admin, and the admin could decide whether they want to give them access continuously or they need
Okay.
to sign in, once a week, etc. That could be done through
Based on
conditional access.
sensitivity or other design elements, right? To that point. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. So that's sort of a neat thing where we saw all of Entra Suite come into play, right? Like the authentication with
Yep.
MFA, we did the identity governance with access packages, with verified ID, and then they got access to the service. So this is the whole, the
What we
user
didn't
experience that
cover
someone gets.
What we
Yeah.
didn't cover, though, Merrill, is the things that are so seamless behind there. For example, SWG being injected for secure private internet access, where now I'm saying, hey,
Yes.
I want this traffic to go through here. I want all my Microsoft stuff that goes to Microsoft
Right.
side to go through the private access so that it's not as phishable, so that I can't be in the middle
Yes.
attacked, so that I don't have those paths forward, right? So that's the other piece not
Absolutely.
really shown here that we couldn't easily do. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like all of I can walk through all of the admin stuff, but they're like showing how to say how all of this is set
Yeah.
up, tied together. We are doing Microsoft is running some accelerator workshops, like multiple hour workshops. If you're really interested in learning how all of this is set up behind the scenes, do jump in on those, and I've
Oh,
shared
those
those
are
links
awesome.
in my in my last newsletter, I did share the registration link for those courses, the workshops that we're running, so you can do that. And I'll just cover one more scenario,
Yeah,
which
please.
is, say you're an analyst, right? So you are a SOC analyst, and you need to access some sites which not everyone in the org would access, right? So I'm
Sure.
um, going
And
to a
these could be
site where I
internet
can learn
sites,
things.
or these could be internal
Yeah.
sites, right? This can be all kinds of myriad of those types of sites too. So
Absolutely. And you can see, because global secure access is running, there's a web filter in place, the secure web gateway, and it's blocking access to this site because not everyone needs to have access to it.
Matt Lee
But
feedback,
he's
it'd be
an,
nice for that to say, you've been blocked. Sorry, have a great day. Just a little piece of feedback as a
yes,
practitioner might be
that
very
would be,
valuable.
yes,
Yeah.
that would be
Okay,
nice.
sorry.
Yes. So what he can do now is he can go into identity governance and say, hey, this is for my role. I need access to this because I need to learn stuff. I'm playing around with this and I need access. So this is where the governance part comes in. And he says,
Oh,
okay, I
so good.
need to get access to that. And he's reviewed. So somebody gets access, or it's an auto approved
This
depending on his role.
this is also a
Yeah.
method to accomplish that goal of saying, I need to separate. And if you look at CIS in late 5 controls, you say separate user workspaces from day-to-day activities. My point being is
Yes.
that you could say, I don't have internet generally, but I need internet for this function and escalate for those capabilities, thus meeting both the front end request and the governance and tracking of when you have to work outside that parameter. It's huge.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all audited. It's all in one place,
Yeah.
right?
Trackable.
That's
Right.
that single pane of getting the view of everything in one place, right? So he's got the access now, and all he has to do is go back to the page that he was viewing. The web gateway already gets that. You can see it allowed him
Really
to
quick
go
too.
through,
Yeah. It's
right?
really
It's
quick.
it's
Yeah.
all
I've used it.
seamless. Yes. So you get all of the power of conditional access. We call it universal conditional access now, and tying all of this in together. And that's basically what Entra Suite gives you, right? Seamless end to end, putting all of this together, really unique scenarios which you might need to spend months designing and
Yep.
architecting a solution. And it's now all going into Entra, defining your policies in conditional access, defining your traffic forwarding, all of that in one place, and bringing it all together, saying you can do this universal conditional access. You can apply this to
Yep.
anything, not just apps that are on Entra, apps that might be on-prem, types of
External,
network
not in your
access can be
control, all of those things, right? In various different
all of
mechanisms.
those. Yeah.
The other thing I'll add to anybody listening, because I am super pro Microsoft right now, is Merill, love
Yeah.
you. But Microsoft also likes to release things in comma space parenthetical preview, which often means, and I used to tell my technicians, if you're doing this, you're on the bleeding edge of Microsoft. And why do they call it the bleeding edge? Because you're often bleeding. And the challenge is, I
Yes.
will say that this product today is probably about 70%, in my opinion, an approximation of where it needs to
Yes.
be. But it does start painting the picture for what the possibilities are when that product gets to that bell curve 85% and starts to actually solve more problems than it creates. And I don't mean that pejoratively. I just mean there is a learning curve. There is the rollout of the agent. I had some challenges with the way the agent first took the PRT that I was showing. I had some challenges with
Yeah.
UI where it just broke and didn't deploy
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
My point is, it's early, but staying early and stuff with Microsoft lets you see that future of what you could paint and just look back to the days of BPOS and the days of identity starting versus
Yes.
now, and the governance and the wraparound and the holisticness. And I make no bones about hiding it. I'm a huge Microsoft fanboy for how we solve this at scale. And that's always been my practitionership. So Merill, I want to say thank you. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to close with or wrap this up with. Is there anything else you wanted to demo for these fine folks?
Nope. That was the end of all of the demos I had. And
Awesome.
yeah, just wanted to show how seamless that experience is when you move
Yeah.
to. Yes. And as you said, like the paint is just drying. We just launched
Yeah.
last month, but
Fair.
we already have so many customers, even large enterprises who have started using it.
Oh, it's so great.
Right? They've said
Yeah.
like this
Especially
solves
for
so
form
many things for
functions,
us.
right? Like one
Yes,
specific function is a great place to start, and then extensibility as you go, as you start taking it more and more. So yeah, that's how I would do it for
absolutely.
sure.
Yes.
Awesome, Merill. As always, I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness. If you're not following Merill and his any of his blogs or any of his posts that he puts out, like it is so chock full of tomorrow. Like you feel like you're reading the future newspaper. So I would just say I don't do aggrandizing statements often, Merill, but if you're not following Merill, you're failing, in my opinion. So anything to close with, Merill, and then we're going to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, so just there's lots happening, new features dropping. Like with even with the Entra Suite, there's so many upcoming. So if you want to stay up to date on all of this, I have a weekly newsletter, entra.news, NEWS, and I think we'll share the link. So just head over to entra.news, subscribe, and every weekend on a Sunday morning, you'll get an email with all of the features and blog posts from MVPs and practitioners who have implemented and their learning. So you can learn from them and just stay up to date on all of the new stuff that's dropping. So yeah,
I
feel free
wouldn't
to
have a
subscribe.
Sunday if it wasn't for the Entra newsletter. So like, I don't even think I'd get out of bed. No, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for getting up at 5:30 a.m. to share this with our groups and people. And hopefully, if you're watching this, you really like the more kinesthetic demo, actually doing it, conversations as practitioners. And if so, please let us know. All right, Merill, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go pretend to be Dom
Perfect.
again, so I'm probably going to suck at this, but we'll try to close this thing out. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank
All
you
right.
so much for
All right.
having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, everybody, I will see you next week. Next week, Dom will be back, so the show will suck less. And also, we're going to be talking with Josh Hobein, who's a friend of mine. I do a lot of stuff with him in IR games, and he's really proven to be an amazing practitioner. And what's interesting is he's going to walk through his cybersecurity maturity journey that he takes partners through, his clients as an MSP, through that maturity journey with us. So that's next week, live, Wednesday, every week at 2 p.m. Mountain, and on demand always. So for someone that asked in the chat, is this going to be recorded? Constantly. It's up on the PAX 8 YouTube. Please watch it. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Appreciate it.
Question to the chat, and I want to just acknowledge that, like, I'm going to double down. I think when we were like ask questions in the chat, if he was like, I don't like Microsoft, I wouldn't have pulled it in, but you never know when it could spark an interesting conversation. Like,
the
hey,
challenge
man,
with that one was they were asking about PAX 8 not dealing with the small vendors, and they were really poking at PAX 8 and our vendorship more than they were anything else. So that's the only reason I took away from that one. So
No. And again, I think that's great the way that you handled it. I do think, like, if we're going to ask people to like ask questions in the chat, sometimes
tackle it.
You know,
cool. We'll tackle this another time.
Exactly.
Thank you. I want people to feel heard. So
that.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to acknowledge that because that was totally
Awesome,
my call,
thanks.
and I like wanted to double down. I was like, I think we should pull this in, and we could be like, bro, you get a rep. Like, you could spend $1, and that could have been like a teachable moment. Or
see, my mind was going to go a different direction, but I don't say that out loud, so we're good.
No. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I just, if we want people to be in the chat, that's all I'm going to say. I'll shut up now.
Awesome, thank you. I love it. By the way, that's really good.